So how's morale in your camp on the other side of Lake Michigan?
It's good within our little compound, the Vander Ark compound. You know, outside of the Vander Ark compound, I think local musicians are having a really hard time. But you know, I lend a hand if I can. But we're doing okay. I mean, we've had a ton of shows cancel, but you know, I've got my hands in so many different things at all times that I'm able to sustain here and perpetuate a life in music.
Cool.
So I'm fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate ones for sure. And having a song that still pays me every month, you know, at least
That's
one.
a sweet thing.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, we were supposed to play together in Washington, D.C. last month or the month before, so I was bummed to have to miss out on that, but perhaps we'll see another day. So you have 3 kids at home? And
yeah, 3 kids, yep.
Cool. Which one's your favorite kid?
My youngest, the boy. I don't like the girls at all. Neither does he.
What do you think is like the thing that's kind of like lowering their ranking on the Vander Ark favorite totem pole?
That I can't relate. It's the whole vagina thing. I have no idea how to relate to what's going on in their business.
That's tough.
My boy's a blast. I mean, we literally talk about penis at least 2 hours, 3 hours a day. We talk about balls and penis because he's 5 and everything is hilarious to him. Like just the idea that I tell him, yes, you explore your body all you want, but I don't need to see you scratching your balls or your penis, you know.
I feel like penis humor is kind of the most like immortal genre of humor that we have right now.
I think so. I don't think that's ever going to change. And I don't think that ever has changed.
Yeah. Well, it's a good time for comedy, and I feel like are you a comedy fan at all?
Yeah, of course. And here's the thing, you know, when I was blogging years ago, I wrote a whole thing about that when Trump took over, of how he was going to, most likely they were going to cut the arts and the whole thing, and everybody's worried about that. And I said, this is going to be a really good time for comedy, really good time, because there's so much to make fun of, and it's only gotten funnier, you know?
Yeah, and as the world has become like maybe at its most sensitive point of all time, I feel like comedy has taken this role of civil service now, where it's more than just entertainment. It's like calling the bullshit, and some of these cats are the only ones with the sack to do it. You know,
look at what Chappelle just did on SNL. I mean, that was a monologue. That was a dream monologue. I mean, I was like that. It wasn't jokes. The guy was just talking and calling us out on our shit. And I thought, this is the best monologue I've heard in a long time. And I'm not even a huge Chappelle fan. I mean, I'm enough of a fan that I appreciate some of the skits and his show somewhat. But, you know, I just thought I'll watch it, you know, and see what he says, because I know he's a bit controversial. And it was great. It was like great. Yeah.
And I really appreciate, actually, speaking of Chappelle, I just watched his stand-up from last year. I watched it last night. And I mean, that guy, he just goes for it, you know, and I really appreciate that about him, like having a massive platform and knowing that, you know, half his audience could just totally abandon him, but he still, you know, takes risks, and, you know, he's calling out the PC culture. He's doing the LGBTQ jokes. He's doing the school shooter jokes, and he... poignant points and lessons learned within those jokes. When you're
on SNL and you light up a cigarette to do your monologue, you have zero fucks, as the kids say. Has
no one ever done that before?
I mean, I'm sure they have. I mean, it's been around since the 70s, so I'm sure, many people have. But I mean, in this climate, in the way things are now, for him to do that, let alone, you know, go off on his tangent, it was pretty great.
Well, when you guys were touring heavily in the 90s, like, you could smoke in bars, couldn't you?
Oh my God, yes. We smoked everywhere. We smoked everywhere. We smoked in hotel elevators. It was a crowded elevator. We didn't care. I mean, nobody really cared. There had to have been such an air of cigarette smoke everywhere, like in the 40s and 50s, when people were smoking in banks and in college classes and that kind of thing. Because I can't stand the smell of cigarettes now. I smell it and I immediately just tense up and, oh my God, I just smelled somebody's smoke, you know. And unless I've had a few drinks and then I want one myself. That still happens on occasion. I don't think that ever goes away. It's nostalgic for me, though, because my dad was a big smoker. No, I've been singing a lot. So...
No, I mean, like when you're in a smoky bar, smoky venue.
I think you're talking about now. No, in fact, I smoked heavily in the 90s. I quit in 2004, I think, when I got married. But no, we didn't all smoke. My brother Brad and I, AJ smoked. We all smoked all the time, all day long. And then after shows, during shows, we smoked. AJ would put a guitar in the end of his cigarette, and cigarette in the end of his guitar, and he would smoke. And I like that. And that was one of those things that, nobody even thought twice about. Now I really
envy that vocal resilience, because like vocally, I'm kind of a bitch. Like I lose my voice all the time, and I worry about it. I have like panic attacks about it. So to hear that, I think some of it's a bit of a mindset too.
How often do you play, though? How often do you sing? Or how often did you sing?
Pre-COVID, yes, I was playing, 5 nights a week, and then
enough.
2-3 nights a week.
You should be able to do it because it's a muscle. I mean, your muscle should be in good shape. If it's not happening, maybe you need to step up on the whiskey.
That could be, and honestly,
it works for me.
Because it honestly loosens up your vocal muscles.
It does. So. And the phlegm, it breaks it apart. And I did that for years. I don't do it that, well, I still do it on occasion, but I don't do it that as much as I did. We used to take 5 or 6 shots of whiskey before every show and drink during the show and then drink after the show. And then smoke too. It was crazy, the amount, and then it still hit the high notes. We had a song called Cup of Tea. That's the highest note I have to hit for the longest period of time. And that used to be a real challenge back in the day. Now I can hit it no problem. I can hit 100 notes in that. Yeah, since I quit smoking, at least.
So you have almost noticed an increase in vocal ability as you've got older.
Absolutely, but that's because I quit smoking, I think. And I played more shows now because when I did the lawn chairs and living rooms tour, the house concert thing, I would do 3 or 4 of those a day. So you're talking about belting it out with no PA system in people's homes for, 3 hours, on the weekends. And then by the 6th or 7th show, the 6th show on Sunday, you knew walking in that this is going to be a shitty show for this person. I'm so sorry I booked it for him because I'm on my last leg, and then you'd let everything build back up from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and go back right out and do it again,
Right. Yeah. I respect the vocal resilience to go with no PA, because I'll bring a PA, which I think enhances things a lot, but it's also like triples the amount of work. And then by the time you're done with one gig, you've hauled gear for 90 minutes and you're just beat.
The issue with that, Brett, is that what I learned when I first did the home concerts was that if I don't have a PA system, I can get in and out, and it's a 2-hour experience on the dot, because I would say I have to get to the next gig at this particular time that night. So I would never stay long. It was always a matter of me going in, talking to people for a half hour, playing for an hour, maybe a little bit more if they had more requests, and then still being able to chit chat for 20 minutes to 30 minutes and then get out of there. And I'm not setting up PA when I get there, and I'm not tearing PA down and that kind of thing. That's typically what happened. In the end, near the end, I was setting up PA more and more. Are you a natural extrovert to the point where you can just hang in someone's kitchen and just riff for an hour and with ease? I think so, because I like people in general. I like to hear stories. I get my story song ideas from people. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of them. That's one of the things that helps me write so much. If I didn't have that and I was an introvert, I'd only have my own stories, and you have to use my imagination too much, So.
I love that you appreciate the house concert situation. I'm a fan myself, and as you know, occasionally you'll get like a strange, bizarre house concert gig where there's something's weird. Maybe the couple who's hosting is fighting or getting a divorce or whatever. Does anything like that come to mind?
I showed up and had a woman dressed in a wedding dress, and she said there was going to be 50 people there, and there was nobody but her in her wedding dress, and she wanted to hear the same song over and over.
No. You being serious with me?
I am being serious with you.
Whoa.
But it's not a true story.
Wouldn't
that be a good one?
That was good. I was buying it.
I went to this. I do speaking gigs, and I went to this. I went to this speech. His name was Lou Heckler. He was like a speaking coach, and you pay like $6,000 to go sit with this guy for 2 days, and he tells you things. And I told him that, and he said, you got to add a third thing that she did. Like she was in a wedding dress, and she wanted to hear the same song, and she was sitting there eating a bowl of cream of wheat. It's like, he's like, comedy comes in threes. If you're going to say something funny, make a third thing. I never forgot that.
And this was a guy. Did you say you paid $3,000 to get advice from him?
Yeah, $6,000. You paid $6,000 to this guy who was in the speaking bureau, and he worked for the speaking bureau, and you'd go there, and you apparently your gigs would exponentially, you'd get 10 times the gigs, which never really happened to me because you have to join the speaking bureau and you have to pay him 40%, fee and everything of your commission and that kind of thing. So I never did I used a couple things he said, but, really there's another story though. I talked to this guy, he's a very funny guy, an older guy. He's been doing it for years and he had great stories too. So we just sat around and shot the shit and he told me what I needed to do to make my presentation better. And I think he did make it better.
So what? Tell me about that. I don't know anything about the speaking gig tours. Are you doing you kind of like pumping people up, and how does that look?
It's a motivational thing, but it's called Rockstar Reinvention. So, I tell the story of the Verve Pipe. How we started and how we were our own business. We sold independent records on our own, sold about 50,000 on our own, and then we got signed and gave over the business and made a big successful record and then followed it up with a record that nobody bought. And then the record where we had a huge comeback record with the song Colorful was in Rockstar, and we had a song called Never Let You Down on the charts. And then that was the 9/11 album. So then I had to reinvent myself after that. So I tell that whole story.
Well, for those of you who are just tuning in, that your album came out like 3 days before 9/11. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I think it was a week. I think it was the week after. I think it came out on September, was that 18th? September 18th. With a bunch of other albums that did very well. I think Tenacious D's album came out at that time. And everybody bought that record.
Oh, that was a gem.
It was a great record. So there really was no excuse, but you just couldn't go out and market anything. You couldn't go out and promote anything after 9/11. Nobody wanted to hear about your album and that kind of thing. So that album was doomed. Anyway, so I tell this whole reinvention story of I sold everything and bought a, RV, and I started the Lawn Chairs and Living Rooms tour, and that was in 2008 or whatever. So I go to it's been mostly financial, UBS and Bank of America and all these other big corporations bring me in, and I tell the story, and then during the story, the linear story, I'll play the freshman, and then I'll play Colorful, and then I'll play kind of a motivational song I wrote at the end, that kind of thing. So it's 45 minutes to an hour of that. So it's
wow.
Fun.
So you were really on the first wave or the second wave of the whole house concert thing. 2008. I mean, 2008. I was a little kid then almost, so I didn't know anything about it.
Well, I didn't know what to do. How it started was I got an email from a fan, and she said, I wonder if you'd come play my birthday party. And we were out of money, and I said, well, I'm kind of a rock star. I don't play birthday parties. I didn't really say that, but that was my attitude. And she said, I'll give you $2,500. I'm like, what time is that party? I'll be there. And I went, and then I was driving home that night, and I had $2,500 in my pocket, a check, and I had $500 in merchandise sales, and it was a great show. And I said, I got 4,000 people on my mailing list, and all of them have birthdays. That's $10 million. Oh my God, I'm going to be a gajillionaire. And, but I sent an email out, and I just said, I don't know what this is. And this email I was very flattered. It went into somebody's marketing book. Because I just put it all on the line. I said, I don't know what this is. You can call it whatever you want, backyard barbecue with BVA or whatever, but book me into your home. I'll come and I'll play for an hour. I'll hang out for an hour and just go directly through me. And I sent the email out, and I got 51 shows booked in 24 hours. And then the next year I did 100. Yeah. And then I did that for 14 years. I just retired it last summer. Good timing. Now I probably have to go back into it. But I just,
so you were driving around in a Winnebago? Were you living out of that thing? How did that look?
I lived out of that for the first 2 years. I met my wife then. And then when we first had our first baby, Evie, she's 15 now. Then we sold it and bought a proper vehicle, And then
so was that
stayed
like one
home.
of was that like a Breaking Bad RV? Was it like
exactly.
what was the inside like?
Yeah, it was shitty. It was 1994 Ford Searcher, aptly named for my situation. I thought, oh, this is definitely me, the Searcher. And then, and it was a piece of shit. But I drove that thing. Engine was great, and I drove that thing all over the country, just playing shows wherever I could. And then I did the house concert thing.
Do you have mechanic skills? Because I heard those things
Zero.
really shard out pretty
Zero.
frequently.
And I beat the hell out of that thing. I mean, I put 2 transmissions in it, so I did put some money in it.
Yeah.
But man, it was a piece of crap. And I did it. I drove it all myself. I just drove that thing. I would drive 8 hours, play a show, drive 8 hours, play a show, drive 8 hours. I followed the band The Samples around. You know that band at all?
The Samples
Was kind of a hippie band, 90s. Never really had any big hits, but they were a big college band,
Okay.
They were like a lesser, they were like a Tragically Hip type of band, but didn't have the kind of following and never got any traction. But they played a lot of shows. They were really popular in Colorado and all over the West Coast. So I went with them and just followed them in their tour bus in my RV for a year, I think.
Oh, just hanging, or were you playing with them?
No, I was playing. I was opening up for them.
I gotcha. Yeah, I think the whole van life, Winnebago life thing, I mean, it's seeing this whole resurgence now with people who can afford to do it. And I mean, I get all these ads popping up on my Facebook and Instagram, like pimp out your van and whatnot. So I mean, I hope everybody gets to experience, a week in van life at some point, because it's like the most freedom and magical feeling I think you can really have.
God,
just traveling solo.
We bought when we sold the RV, we bought an Airstream, one of the new ones. That was a 2007 or 2008 Airstream, and that was great for a while because you always have an amazing back room. I mean, those things were super pimped out. So whatever shitty club you played in, you always had a great back room because you'd just stay in your Airstream where you lived. My wife.
Was that you and your lady, or you and your band?
Yeah, my wife and I.
Okay, and she's like a champion of the road. She always loved the miles.
Yeah, she loved the road, and she was a musician too. So we'd play shows together and that kind of thing. And she's long since retired, but we traveled that way and through the birth of our first daughter, and then up until the next daughter was born, and then there wasn't enough room in the Airstream anymore.
So you toured with a baby for a year or two?
Yeah, we toured with her. Yeah, sure.
Wow, that's cool. How do you work that? How does that work logistically when you got a little gnome in the back?
I mean, we always try to get, Lux typically would hang with her while I played the show, and we'd be parked in Manhattan, we'd be down. I play a show in New York, and we'd find 2 parking spaces next to each other. We'd park it there, and we'd set up camp for the night. And they'd stay in the Airstream. I'd play the show and come out, and we'd have the, we had the generator and the whole thing. So
wow.
it was all good. I mean, it was great. It's just that it's a lot of work. There's so much work involved in it.
Yeah,
it's very taxing on the body when you're playing a lot of shows. Plus, trying to find parking in the cities and that kind of thing is tough. But for the most
I can't imagine like waking up in the morning and like stepping onto the sidewalk and you're just in Manhattan.
We did that all the time. It was in every big city. We did that in every city.
And the cops, there's no like laws where you can sleep there legally?
Now you'd be surprised what you get away with in an RV. In fact, I used to mess around in the old RV in the Searcher, and I would break all kinds of laws, like no left turns here and stuff. We have to do the stupid Michigan left or whatever I do. And I would just turn and think if I ever got pulled over, but then I got pulled over, people would just say, oh, that's some old guy. He doesn't know what he's doing, or whatever. And just, get away with so much shit now that I have gray hair too. It's great.
Hell yeah. Well, not to bring up what might be a cliche interview talking point for you, but you mentioned the movie Rockstar. That's the movie with Mark Wahlberg, right?
Right. Yep.
And that's
Jennifer
early
Aniston.
2000. I know you did some songs for that movie. Were you in the movie as well?
Yeah, I played the bass player in the movie, the bass player that kicks him out of the band. I'm in that first band.
I thought that was, I couldn't remember if that was you
out.
or the
I
Guffs.
was 6'5".
Are you still 6'5"?
5'4", I think. I was 6'5". I stood out more than any. I was like a skyscraper in a small town. That's what I looked like in that movie. It's ridiculous.
Well, that was a pretty good movie.
Did you just ask, am I still 6'5"?
I didn't know you were 6'5". I never met you in real life.
It's funny. No, I'm 6'5". Yeah.
I remember that film, and I think I was in like 5th or 6th grade when it came out, and I remember like getting it on VHS, and like my pops walking in on my mom and I watching it, and he was so pissed because I mean that movie was like rated R. Everyone was having sex with each other. It was a pretty intense movie. A lot of booze and drugs. The funny thing
is that it would have been a better movie had they edited the script the way it was, because the script had a lot more sex and drugs, and it was pretty edgy. I think John Stockwell wrote it, New York Times writer, and it was great when I signed on. And then, then Stephen Herrick directed it, and he was a Disney director. He directed Mighty Ducks, and and he kind of Disneyfied it, but still it was edgy enough. It was rated R.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty edgy. Wasn't there a scene where like Wahlberg was? It's fuzzy to me, but he's like was hooking up with the A&R lady, and then the A&R lady, did she turn out to be a dude? I can't remember what happened.
Yes,
but there's like a scene where she's like taking a whiz standing up.
I believe that's the case, if I remember. It's been a while since I see it, but I think she also kissed Jennifer Aniston, if I remember, or maybe that was my fantasy.
No, I think that happened. I think that's kind of the part where my pops walked in and just flipped out. He's like, "You got to turn off these bare tits. They can't have that in the house." He's not happy. Did you get to party with Wahlberg?
Sure, of course. He invited us over quite a few times. Really great guy. He loved the song. I wrote Colorful for that movie that he lip syncs in the end of the movie. And he loved that song. I remember the first day I met him, I was walking in the airfield. They had a big airplane hangar where they filmed a lot of the concert footage and rehearsal stuff. And I'm walking down, literally on a runway, going to catering or whatever. And this car pulls up, and it's this like huge Le Mans or one of those old Monte Carlos or whatever, and tires screech. And he's hanging out the window, and he's got his mullet. I got my mullet, and he's totally in character. And he's got his jacket open and those fucking abs that just make you nauseated. You're so jealous.
Chisel.
This body, totally chiseled. He's like, "Dude, great fucking song, man." And he's like, "I know I can be colorful." He's singing my own song. It was like just a great moment. And then he peels off again, and I heard a crash, but I'm not sure what exactly happened.
That must be trippy, because that's like at the peak of Wahlberg's career. Huge. You're on the rocket ship. You must be getting invited to like celebrity parties all the time at this point, huh?
Yeah. Well, we were on the road so much though. We just didn't do a lot of that kind of thing, because we took every gig we could take always. We would prefer to be on the road, our band always.
Yeah.
We had to take 3 months off for me to do Rockstar.
Ah, okay. I saw you post a picture, it might have been today, of you on Leno when you're like 22.
Yeah. Thank you for that. But I was actually 30, probably 35 at that point. I was an old rocker at that point. In 97, I was 33.
Did you feel like going on the late night shows and stuff and sitting on the couch and riffing with these like A-list celebs? Did you feel pretty comfortable all the time, or was that some?
Yeah, that never bothers me. That never really bothered me. The first time it ever would have bothered me was Willie Nelson gave me my first big break when I went to his. I got on his bus and gave him a demo tape. A buddy of mine was a country DJ and said, "I got to interview Willie. Come on the bus with me and bring a demo." And I did, and I got to meet Willie. And I was pretty nervous, but I had gotten a little high before I got on, because I figured, my other buddy said, "You got to be a little high to relax yourself." Yeah. And then I was so high, I just wanted to get into a tub with Willie. I kept trying to resist the urge for pulling on his pigtails. And it was just the stupidest thing.
Well, I assume Willie's going to offer you more dubage once you get on the bus also.
Well, that's the thing too, is that, leaving the bus, I had, my own little buzz, and then I'm sure it was exacerbated by the contact buzz that I got, because as soon as you walked in, you were smacked with, ganj.
So Willie's got to be 93 or 94?
Yeah, that had to be. That was in immortal? 90. That was in 89 or 90 when that happened with me, and I thought he looked kind of like Grandpa back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but he's probably my age. Yeah, he's probably mid 50s then.
What do you think it is with Willie that he's I don't know, the guy, I've never met him. He seems to just maintain this level of zen that is untouched by most other humans.
He's one of the most genial, nicest, affable men, easygoing that I've ever met in my life. And he had no reason to be nice to me. Like this was when I had nothing going on but a little demo cassette tape, and he was just took me right in. And then he called me 3 days later personally to invite me to play at Farm Aid 4. Yeah.
No
I mean,
shit.
and then he got out of his trailer at Farm Aid 4 just to come out in the middle of the day to come and introduce me. Because I was with, Neil Young was there, Lou Reed was there, Elton John was there, Bonnie Raitt was there, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Brian Vander Ark. You know what I mean? And he probably sensed that this is going to be a little intimidating if he doesn't go out and introduce me. And he went out and introduced me, and it was just great. Just one of my greatest moments.
Yeah, what an honor.
Yeah,
Are there, what were some of the other bands in the 90s that you were like close allies with?
We toured incessantly with Tonic. We toured with them for, it feels like it was a year, a little over a year. That was a long tour, and we kept extending it. Tonic and Case Choice, great band.
Oh, yeah,
Remember that song? Yeah, Attic.
Hell yeah.
Not an attic, but we would do...
Love that song.
We would do Beatles songs together at the end of the set, we'd get everybody out there, and it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. They're terrific guys. That whole group of us, the three of us. So we did that quite a bit. But then, I was friends with Third Eye Blind, those guys, Stephen Jenkins and I, when he was in Rockstar with me, and Rob Thomas and all these, other bands that we played with all the time. We did all the radio festivals, and that's when you got to see everybody because everybody was on the road. So the radio festival shows always sucked, the show themselves, but the backstage areas were a blast. I mean, everybody just hung out and you drank all day, and then you played your set and you came off and you laughed about how stupid the set was. And
wait, so why were there? What do you mean radio show? Is it like the radio station through a festival?
Yeah, they did that in the 90s. Edge Fest and all these rock fests where everybody was doing them and you played them for free. Like they didn't pay you to play. They would tell you, if you don't play our radio festival, we're not going to play your song anymore. And that's how they would get you to play for free. So we would be in Portland one night and then have to fly down to Jacksonville, Florida to play a radio fest for free and then fly back to Portland to take the bus to the next show. And everybody had the same problem. I mean, everybody did the same thing. But like I said, they always sucked because when you get 10 bands on a festival stage, all of them kind of different, like you put Prong with Duncan Sheik, fans of Skinny Puppy aren't going to want to sit through a Duncan Sheik show or whatever, and they're going to throw shit at Duncan, you know what I mean? And that shit happened all the time. But then you go backstage and everybody's laughing about it, having a good time. I thought the worst we were going to get it was when we played with Henry Rollins, but he was terrific and he was really a nice guy too.
I'm a Rollins fan. What is it with I read a lot of Rollins writing, and he always talked about like playing these punk shows, and like people who were there to see his band would throw shit at him. Like that was like part of the hardcore culture or something.
Yeah, I remember reading one of his, it might have been Ice Cream, one of his books, and he talked about somebody came up and told him to please spit in my face, and he did. And then he felt so bad about it, 2 minutes later, that he turned around and was going to beat the guy up and say, "Don't ever let anybody spit in your face, dude." Instead of yell at his own fan.
Yeah, there's something bizarre about that, like masculine energy all in one place, where these mosh pits, like people are just like, they want to punch each other in the face, and then they get a rush from it. Or Henry Rollins doesn't mind getting hit in the head with a PBR bottle because it gives him more energy.
We did the Kiss. We did Kiss tour. We toured with Kiss for 30 dates, and that was the worst. I mean, that was like you had no idea. You're so pumped up to play with Kiss. And we were so stoked and so excited to do it. And Gene even came back the first night to, say, hey, and he had heard the album. And that's why we went on the tour with it. He had asked if we wanted to tour with him. And then we went out and we were so pumped up. And as soon as the lights went down and 20,000 people roared in anticipation of seeing Kiss, because they'd waited for 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and Kiss got the original members back together and the whole thing. It was a huge spectacle. And then we stepped on the stage and these little pin lights came up, like little flashlights came up. But first, the Verve Pipe, this little squeaky voice, and just the rain of booze and shit thrown at us and spit on. My brother Brad was the bass player. I remember he wore black every night, black t-shirt, black jeans, really predictable. And he'd come back at the end of the show and he'd be covered in loogies all over his shirt, just gobs of spit, because he'd go right out front and he'd flip people off while he was playing. Like he didn't care. And it was disgusting, but that was the worst. 30
Savages.
Of those days.
Were there like any like gains from that tour, or did it just feel like a giant net loss?
Well, I mean, a game that I would never fear another crowd again, ever. You know, that was one thing. I've had a tremendous amount of confidence on stage since then. But that was the only thing gained. But it was a terrible idea to tour with them.
Wow.
I mean, but, you go from, you know, going from cramming 5 guys into a hotel room and you're in a van to touring with Kiss, you got to get a tour bus, you know, so then we got a tour bus, and then suddenly we were on a big time tour, like and it was like a 2-week thing. Hey, Kiss says yes, they really want you to come on tour, and we've got worked out the schedule. Get in, you know, let's get a bus, let's get going, and then you got a driver and the whole thing, and it was just, that was the amazing part, and catering and the masseuse and all that other shit that you get to use of Kisses, you know.
Man, so actually, it's funny you bring that up. I just read Peter Criss's book.
Oh, he wrote a book?
And holy shit. I mean, like...
Can you put a sentence together? No offense. I mean, I like Peter, but, you know, he and Ace were a bit out of it even back then, you know.
Wow, yeah, he calls his penis the spoiler because apparently it's so big it just ruins it for everybody else later on.
That's the autobiography I want to write, not read. But I want to write that one. He said
Gene Simmons would get pissed because... Gene would be like at the computer mixing a song, and then Ace Frehley and Peter Criss would put their wieners on each of his shoulders, and then they'd tap him on the shoulder, and he'd like turn into their wiener with his nose.
That's the kind of shit I love, man.
Yeah.
I wish I had stories like
humor.
that. Hey, let's call that my story. Can you edit this?
You can have it. Splice it up.
Edit this out, and we'll say that was my story.
So were they still like completely out of control savages when you were on tour with them? Because they talk about this like
exact opposite. No
really?
alcohol.
Okay.
We weren't allowed to have alcohol. No drugs or alcohol backstage. Nothing.
No kidding.
I'm surprised they let us smoke because Gene's are notorious for the non-smoking thing. But no, we couldn't have any alcohol. We swapped out. We had to swap out a bottle of Jack for like a jug of milk for our little bowls of cereal that our, you know, keyboard player wanted. But
so they're not boozing at all.
No, we got juice boxes. Ace was a juice box drinker. Yeah, it was so funny because you'd see him in full costume backstage and he'd be walking up and down the halls, not really knowing where he was going, it seemed. And he'd have a juice box. He'd be hunched over sipping on a juice box, and his handlers would come out and each would grab an elbow and say, "It's this way, Ace. The stage is this way." That kind of thing.
Oh, because we did this little run with Better Than Ezra last year, and we were in New York, and everyone all the staff was like, "Oh, there's Ace Frehley's beer in the fridge. He left his beer in there, so you can have some." So everyone was like, "Wow, let's drink Ace Frehley's beer."
Amazing. So he
maybe he's back on the sauce, or maybe
he's off the wagon.
I think maybe he might have quit drinking when he was partying. Did you ever hear this story? Like, Peter Criss is boozing and he's hooking up with some lady, and apparently there's like a bunch of ladies and guys in the room, you know, just full debauchery, totally out of control. Yeah. And he finishes his beer and he looks down, and his bandmate Ace Frehley is just blowing him.
Wait, who was getting blown? But I thought Ace Frehley was the one.
Peter Criss was getting blown by his own bandmate Ace Frehley, and he didn't even. I don't think either of them even realized it until they came to you know.
God, what? Oh, that's a Mr. Show. You ever watch Mr. Show?
I've heard of it. What is that?
Oh my God, Dave Cross and Bob Odenkirk. Oh my God, there's a great heavy metal moment like that where they're doing that very same thing, and then there's and then it comes out that the manager's like, "My God, you guys are gay." And like, "What? We're not gay. What are you talking about?" And this tape shows up with them doing that. Like, "That's not gay. What are you doing?" Anyway,
David Cross. I mean, he's like renowned, but he's got like the weirdest comedian I've ever seen. I don't
know.
He's
one of those guys. It's really well. Now that you say you don't get it, I don't want to say he's really smart. But it's not that. It's like one of those things where it's mostly just a conversation. It feels like it's impromptu, like he's just making it up as he goes along. But if you ever get a chance to see one of a show he did at the Exit Inn in Nashville, the guy there, the manager there is a notorious asshole, or at least back then was. And he does this great thing where the guy gets so pissed off at him. They have this argument or whatever before the show. And then afterwards, like, David Cross is in the back room and he's taking his sweet time to get out of there, like so much so that the manager has to come back and yell at him because he's picking up one thing and putting it in his bag, and he's going to make that manager wait there until 2 in the morning. Yeah. And it's great. It's all in this film.
Yeah, he seems to be like, he's like this comedian that all like the top indie bands in the world are obsessed with. Like, he's in a bunch of the Strokes videos. He's in was it the Thermal? A couple other big indie bands. But yeah, I always see Spoon. He's always in like Spoon footage and stuff.
Very funny guy, man. I think he's really funny. He's a great actor too. He's done a lot of really. I mean, look, Arrested Development. I mean, he was so good on that show.
Right. Who else are you dig? Who are your like comedic heroes?
Man, who recently? I really dig Dimitri Martin. I think he's great. I really love John Mulaney. Is it Mulaney? Yeah, Mulaney.
Yeah.
Loved his stand-up thing. I thought Seth Meyers was really good too. I was shocked by his. I mean, I thought, we'll see what this is like. And I thought it was really funny too. So, but I like the more edgy, weird comedians, the Dimitri Martins of the world. I like those guys. It would have been back in the day, would have been Mitch Hedberg for me, like really cerebral stuff that I dig, you know. So,
as a solo performer who tells stories and jokes between songs, are you?
Do I ever steal from them? Yes.
Are you cautious as to being like edgy with the jokes? Like, will you tell some rated R dick jokes? Yeah. Will you go for it, or you want pretty cautious?
I mean, if there's kids. No. Yeah. A lot of times I have kids because we made kids albums, you know. I put 2 kids albums out.
Sure.
You know, so, sometimes I have to do a couple of kids songs at a house concert. So, no, but if it, after, if it's one of those shows that's at 10 o'clock, or I used to do fireside shows at midnight or whatever, midnight fire show, and then they'd get super blue, and then we'd tip the bottle and I'd start telling the real dark stories.
There it is.
So
what... Vander Ark, what gets you pumped like these days outside of music? Like, what are kind of the things that get you stoked?
Film, movies, writing in movies. I love screenwriting. I love film. Love it. And I could, TV shows. TV is so great right now. There's so many great shows. The Good Lord Bird is a great show on Showtime with Ethan Hawke, and I'm really into that. And I've been into, the Pen 15 show is amazing. All these other shows that are really, really funny. So that's what really gets me stoked, watching a really good movie. And for instance, tonight, I have this bourbon safe that I have. I have to lock up my bourbon. It's this great canister, and I got my bourbon in there. And it's a break proof glass, so you can't break it, and then you set the timer on it, and so I'll have the timer set for like 3 days, so I don't drink every night, or try not to drink every night. And then you can't open it, it totally locks, and you can't take the battery out of it. You can take the battery out of it, but you put the battery back in, it goes back to the time it was at when it last was in there, whatever. All these like funky things just so I won't drink. But then when it opens, first thing I do is I figure out what movie I'm going to watch tonight. Tonight's the night. My bourbon safe's open up. So come 7 p.m. tonight, my wife's putting the kids to bed tonight. It's her turn. I made sure I did it last night. And I'm going to drink some bourbon and watch a great movie,
Was there a catalyst to the bourbon safe where you were just like drinking too much bourbon that you needed the safe?
Night. My wife got me a beautiful bar for my birthday, my 50th birthday, gorgeous, huge bar, stocked, full in the house, and it was beautiful. And I just drank every night, and I'm like, I can't do this. And I realized I love bourbon so much that if it's in the house, I'll have to drink it. I have to drink it if it's open.
Yep.
I said, okay, well, that's it. I got to figure out something. I bought this. It was a snack box originally for obese people. So you're supposed to lock up your snacks. And I thought, it's perfect size for a bottle of bourbon. So I put my bourbon in there. And I've done this for a year now. And it works every 3 or 4 days. Sometimes I'll be aggressive and I'll set it and I'll say, I'm going to be really healthy this week. And I'll set it for 6 days. And then by the 3rd day, I'll end up going to the store and buying another bottle,
Yeah.
So
what do you do? Like, what's your kind of, your mental health boosts that maybe, you want to pull yourself out of the lurch mentally after a couple too many whiskeys, or just in general, like, what do you do to feel better mentally?
That's a good question. In fact, now is a really tough time to pull myself out of the funk. Usually the funk, I can embrace the funk and write. So I've been in writing mode. And when I write now, it's much darker, like the early Verve Pipe stuff in the 90s, the villain stuff. And Overboard was a good example of that too. We made an album, Overboard, that was super dark, and that was after we had done a couple of kids records that were super fun. So right now the writing's pretty dark, and that's the way that I typically channel things and typically get that out of my system. But I got a loving wife and I got great kids. My kids are amazing. They're all talented. Everybody's super funny, and so we have a really good life here in Michigan too. If I didn't, I'd be dead. I mean, honestly, you live this life and you're single and, you're drinking every day and you're trying to write and you're trying to claw back to the career you had at one point where you're on the top and it's just not happening anymore. And, now all the gigs get canceled because of COVID, and you go, I wouldn't survive that. There's no way.
Sure.
I don't know how guys do it.
Well, I mean, you've lived in, two very different eras of music where, you're on the rocket ship, that all the admin is kind of done for you as a major label band, right. But you seem to have transitioned really well to being your own person, being your own boss, being your own musician, setting up a lot of the stuff on your own. Is that something you enjoy and see yourself to continue to do in the future?
Oh man, I get up at 5. This morning I got up at 4. I mean, I get up early because it's quiet in the house and I can think about business. I mean, I love business. I love the business. I'm not a huge fan of the business of music, but I am a business I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a fan of being an entrepreneur, and I'm a fan of running a business. So I'm trying to make money and figuring out ways to make money, and in this climate, last month I sold $2,000 worth of merchandise, which has never happened. But I found a way to hustle it and figured it out. And these are the kind of things that you have to do. And that's what keeps me pumped up for sure.
Yeah, that's it. I enjoy the business side of it too. I find it fun. I find it exciting. I'm not a numbers guy, but for some reason I find some of the data stuff fun with kind of like the Facebook and that kind of thing. And I remember early on in playing music, it was not cool to talk about knowing stuff about the business.
It's not cool now either, dude.
Well, it's not cool, but I feel like it's respected now.
Sure it is. Well, the fact is that you don't have to pay somebody to do it. And that I like. And, when we started the band, like I said, we sold 50,000 copies of, our first 2 independent records on our own before we got signed. We had a choice. We could say, well, things are looking up. We're doing great. We sold 10,000 of the first album and 40,000 of the second album. The trajectory is right. Or we could sign the dotted line, have somebody else take over that whole thing and be ensured that we were going to have the priority to, have a shot at getting a number 1 song with the Freshman, because we knew the Freshman was going to be it. And we chose to sign, and it was the right thing to do, But in the end, now it's look behind me, I got the platinum records and everything, but I'm living in a, pretty humble place in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But I'm happy with that. Got a nice studio.
Midwest. I appreciate you. You stick to your roots and rep the Midwest. That's very cool.
Yeah, where are you from? Where are you from?
I'm out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so just around the lake from you.
Man. I'm Music Town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pet Engine. Do you remember? You're probably too old to remember a band called Pet Engine. They were
Pet Engine.
Pet Engine.
The name sounds vaguely familiar, but I mean, Midwest. Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio. We love that guitar rock and roll, and it seemed to have worked out really well. But people still go out
to see shows. In fact, 2 years ago, I think, or maybe it was a little over a year ago, we played at what's the name?
Pabst.
No, the Pabst Theater. I played there.
Collectivo,
yeah. And people came out, and I was like, we haven't been here in years, and I think we had 2 nights there, and it was great.
Hell yeah, man! I could see you guys doing well here. It's a blue collar PBR town, so it's right in your wheelhouse. Vander Ark, do you have any good life advice for a 33-year-old musician?
Oh no!
Tell me how to not blow it. That's all I want to know.
Honestly, man, what we were just talking about, I'm not the one to give you advice, but I'll tell you this. What's worked for me is the happiest I've ever been is to not answer to anybody else, to be my own man, to write the way I want to write. You start a song. When you start a song, sometimes the voice in your head will say, don't go in that direction because that's not you. Or don't go in that direction because you're pandering to what you think radio is going to like and what the masses are going to like. Don't listen to any of those voices. And each song that you start, go with whatever direction that song is telling you to go. Listen to the song and not the voices in your head. And by the end of the day, you're going to have a song, you wake up the next day and you're going to listen to it and you go, that's shit, or that's really great.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And if it's really great or really good, at least you'll work on it some more. But you maintain that direction and don't listen to those voices in your head that tell you you shouldn't do this and musically this doesn't make sense. It all makes sense if it sounds good.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. I agree. And that you're right. That incubation period, no matter what kind of art you're making or creating, it's like you have to leave it alone, come back a day or two or three
fresh
later
ears.
to have any sort of perspective.
You got to have fresh ears for stuff, because the greatest thing you're ever doing is what you're working on at that moment. It always comes back, and I listen to stuff a week later that I thought was great, and I'm like, oh my God, this is garbage. And then I pick it apart and put it in other songs,
Well, riddle me this, Vander Ark. Sometimes, with the sheer quantity of songs, film, media, whatever in the world, do you ever feel like you're just like, I shouldn't write more songs for a while because I got too many. They're sitting in the back cabinet. I don't know what to do with them.
We all do that.
It's like, it's a weird predicament, because sometimes I feel like maybe I'm doing the world a disservice by putting out more music when they haven't maybe absorbed some of the other recent stuff.
You have issues, then you need to see it. You need to see a musical therapist then. If you think that you're, the thing is that don't be part of the problem. Whatever the problem is, don't be part of the problem. And the way I look at it is, yes, I write and write and write. And some of the stuff is going to hit people one way and some of the stuff's going to hit people the other way. But in the end, I've left some sort of legacy of songs. And one of those songs that nobody liked, one person might like it and it might save their life. I'm that dramatic about it. Perhaps that was the one song that they found inspiration from. So I say write every day. I try to write every day.
Right. Well said. Yeah, there is that appreciation. Sometimes I'll stumble upon a new band. I'll hear some song that I become obsessed with, and then I pull up their discography, and it's like one of their B-sides that no one gives a shit about. And I'm like, they'll never play this live. I'll never see it, but it means something to me. That
happened to me with a band called Elbow that I fell in love with.
Love Elbow.
Yeah, great band. And I heard something. I forget what I heard. It was off of the Takeoff and Landing of Everything. And I was like, what is this? And I went and I listened to the album, and I was like, holy shit. I listened to the album incessantly for 2 years. And then my wife and I, the only time we've ever gone to destination concerts, we flew to San Diego to see him. We flew to Scotland to see him, but that show got canceled. We're going to fly to Amsterdam here last year in March when the COVID thing hit. And so, we couldn't see him then either, but oh my God, I would love that band. And it's all because I heard one song that was like, that's interesting.
Deeply innovative band.
Yeah, I love them.
Holds up well with time and really creative, really bending the rules.
I think they were together in 92, 93 too. So they've been around forever. But for your listeners, highly recommend the band Elbow.
Hell yeah. Were there, as we wind it down here, Vander Ark, were there have you ever played in any bizarre, really far away countries, places? Did music ever take you to corners of the globe where you never thought you'd ever get to?
Farthest corner we were on the globe was Japan, and that was because we won the Yamaha Soundcheck in 1993. It was a worldwide Battle of the Bands competition. We won the regional, and then we won the national in Dallas, and the national winner got to go to Japan to compete with the world finals. And we competed. We came in second place, got a check for $25,000.
No shit.
Yeah, second place. And the first place band was a Japanese duo that sang to a karaoke track that was on a reel-to-reel, and their prize was $50,000, whatever, the equivalent of $50,000 US, and a car that didn't meet US specs. It was like a mini little thing, and we're like, this thing is so rigged, ridiculous.
What?
But we got $25,000 in second place. It was pretty cool. So that was the.
So you went to Japan. You only had to play one show.
We played one show. We played one song at this show, a song called Victoria, and we stayed there in Sumagoi for, I think, 10 days. We were there. Something crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, they put all these bands up for 10 days for promotion and all this other stuff. And it was a blast. And
So that was before people knew.
Yeah, we were.
People didn't know you at that point.
We weren't signed at that point. That's where we met our manager before we got signed to RCA.
I mean, you were the tallest guy in Japan that week. Were there like
3 times the size of anybody there when I was there?
Were people jumping behind your pictures and stuff?
I was a mascot. I was a walking mascot. Everybody wanted their picture with me. It was ridiculous. Like they couldn't.
I love
believe
that.
It. Yeah.
We did Japan last year, and there's at least like 2 photos that they're just photobombed by some random civilian that just throws the peace sign up in the background.
Isn't that funny?
Yep. This at one point we were supposed to meet this radio guy outside of the subway station, like at a central corner where there's a lot of people, and I had a guitar on me, and these 2 random Japanese guys with big microphones just saw this tall white guy standing there, and they just came up to me and started interviewing me. They thought I was like, they're like, this guy must be famous. But there was 2 separate radio guys that were totally different from the radio guy that was supposed to meet us. So we do this radio interview. The guy takes a CD from us and spins it on the commercial radio station that day to whatever, like 1 million people. I don't know how many people are.
They? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't they? I mean, you're first of all, you stand out. You know, any American will stand out there, and you got a guitar, and they must think if you're here, you've got to be famous.
It's funny to think the inverse of that. Like if you're a tall white guy in America with a guitar, like people just want to smash it. They're like, who's this pussy? You know what I mean?
No, he's just another lazy musician. You know, I get that a lot. I'm sure you get that a lot too. You know, well, do you just get up? It's 3:00 in the afternoon. You know, woke up at the crack of noon. That kind of cliche.
Yeah, man. The morning's where it's at. It's crispy. The air's fresh. You get a head start on the world. I totally relate to that. Well, Brian, it's been an honor to talk to you, man. I feel like I've known you for 20 years. Yeah,
it feels like the conversation went that way. That's good. That's always good to have a conversation that way. But however, you've also interviewed some friends of mine. I knew that when you put the Bare Naked Ladies guy on there. I thought,
yes,
I got to get on Brett's show, So.
Oh, BNL, baby, all the way. Well, let's drink some coffee when the world comes alive, and some whiskey. Whether you're in Milwaukee or Grand Rapids, we'll make it happen.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, thanks for tuning in.